I'm just going to start with a poem. It's about where I'm from. Memories of my childhood live between the rings of sand around my ankles and the desert heat in my lungs. I still believe that nothing washes worry from tired skin better than the Nile and my grandma's hands. Every day, I go to school with the weight of dead neighbors on my shoulders. The first time I saw bomb smoke, it didn't whine and billow like the heat from the kitchen hearth, but it forced itself on the Darfur sky, smothering the sun with tears that it stole from our bodies. The worst thing about genocide isn't the hunger, the murder, the politics, the government-paid soldiers that chase you across borders and into camps. It's the silence. For 3 months, they closed the schools down because people like us are an eyesore. So the first month, we took it. The second, we waited. The third month, we met underneath the date palm trees, drinking up every second our teachers gave us, turning fruit pits into fractions. On the last day, they came with a message, put them in their place. We didn't stand a chance. Flesh was never meant to dance with silver bullets, so we prayed for the sun to come and melt daggers from our backs. I hid underneath the bed that day with 4 other people. 12 years later, and I can't help but wonder where my cousins hid when the soldiers torched the houses, threw the bodies in the wells. So if the weapons didn't get you, the poison would, and sometimes they didn't want to use bullets because it would cost them more than we did. What does it matter? I've seen 16 ways to stop a heart. When you build nations on someone's bones, what sense does it make to break them? In one day, my mother choked on rifle smoke. My father washed the blood from his face. My uncles carried half the bodies to the hospital and the rest to the grave, and we watched. For every funeral we planned, there were 60 we couldn't have to stand, and the Sahara tastes a lot like powdered bone. And when the soldiers came, our blood on their ankles, I remember their laces. Scarlet footprints on the floor. I remember waking to the sound of hushed voices in the night, etched with the kind of sorrow that turns even the loudest dreams to ash. Our parents came home with broken collarbones and the taste of fear carved into their skin, and it was impossible to believe in anything. Fear is the coldest thing in the desert, and it burns you, bows you down to half your height, and owns you. And no one hears you, because what could grow in the desert? Anyway, thank you. My name is Emtithal. I'm called Emmy, and I guess the title that I have as a Goodwill ambassador for UNHCR, the easiest way to explain that is that I use my words to help raise awareness about the biggest crises of our times. I make people feel better about things that are terrible, and I make them feel calm when the world is ending. When I say the world is ending, I don't necessarily mean climate change, rising nationalism everywhere, your favorite superhero dying. I actually cried for 3 days, but we're gonna talk about that. I mean that for most people that I work with, the world has truly ended. And at one point or another, it felt like the world was ending for me and my family. In the middle of that poem, I was 7 years old, in the heart of Darfur, hiding under the bed, looking to my mom for guidance. But then fast forward to 15 years after that, and I was the closing speaker at my Yale graduation. Living proof that there is another side, and you do come out of it alive. So what I do in my work is I think, every day I ask myself this question, that if someone had come to me and my people 15 years ago and was able to tell us, this is going to happen, tell us what the next 15 years are going to be like, warn us about what would be to come, I think about what they would say. And every day I have to do the same, because I'm always standing on the other side of the same war, it seems. So I want to talk to you today about 3 people who inspired me to keep moving in those moments, and I hope it inspires you. The first person I want to talk about is my grandmother, because everything that I know about crisis management and international development and all those things I learned in her kitchen. And that's what this next poem is about. Because the reality is that, most of the world, when you think about crisis and you think about problems, you see the breaking points, you see the explosions, you see when things are already too late. But there are a lot of people who see behind the scenes, the years and years and years that lead up to it. This poem is called Choir of Kings. In the heart of Khartoum, I hear a radio tune about a butterfly sauce. The meter is spilling into our home, the melody chosen to make the woman's voice sound as fragile as the messaging behind the advert she sang. The best advice my mother ever gave me was to use this butterfly sauce. And I thought, my grandmama's sauce could eat your mama's sauce 3 times over and still have room for your aunties too. There is nothing fire ever taught me that my grandmother didn't already know. The way the air would move to make space for her, the ground a canvas beneath her feet, her light unstoppable, her force complete. Her blood orange nails would cut through the smoke to drop the cloves in. A pinch of sugar kept the people guessing. I've never lived in my grandmother's house, but basically everybody else has. The widowed woman and her daughter, the homeless man by the market, the children carried in by the drought, the well-digger and his camel, the tailor, the tinker. She used to say that home is a question, and every one of us an answer. So don't be asking questions when you see people in my house. I don't know how not to wear these stories like a fresh coat of paint already cracked by the distance there still is between us. What makes a person? Is it the way we crumble, the way we fall, as if each is the first and last time? Is it our foolishness, our strength, the change we make, how we die, how we come back from the brink of death? Is it the things we lose, the things we pass down from those before us? Sometimes I wonder what it would feel like to belong to myself. Is it the way we break, the way we hurt one another? Is it our excuses, the stories that we keep and the ones that we leave out? Is it other people, the ones that we keep and the ones that we leave out? Is it the steady solitude of always being in one body no matter how much you love another person? Is it the love that we give and the love that we don't get back? I count my siblings every morning to make sure they're all still there. In the back of my mind, voices carry, my own catches up. I count again. I don't know what it means to not be me. Sometimes I smile just to keep existing. And in her last days, my grandmother would carry hot coals away to the pit until the pot cooled, having the coals until the bubbles slowed to a simmer, the chunks to a smolder, the embers to ash, as if she were replicating her entire life in those moments. And when she died, the pigeons by the pear tree migrated from her tree to her bedside and back. And the people, the strangers, sought refuge in her home, a procession of misfits, a choir of kings. Thank you. The thing that's interesting about my grandmother, I mean, like, there's a million things interesting about her, God rest her soul, but she was illiterate. Women weren't allowed to read or write back then in Sudan, where I'm from, where I was born. And so her rebellion, and I think the rebellion of her entire generation, was to raise kids that were obsessed with reading and writing. They're like, you won't let us do it, but I'll be down if my daughter does it. What's really beautiful is that because of that legacy, I was able to be a total nerd and go to college and all these different things. So the next person I want to talk to you about is my professor at Yale, one of my science professors. I'm a science nerd. I'm like a covert science nerd because I write poetry. What's really beautiful is that, I got the opportunity to be in the World Poetry Competition, and I had to go to a qualifying match. And it was super crucial. If I didn't go, I wouldn't be able to compete. And so my professor kind of sat me down and had a talk with me. All the other professors had agreed, and my dean too, but I had to just convince one of them. And he was just like, you have to choose. I said, what do you mean I have to choose? He said, well, you have to choose between science and your grades and your hobby. And I kind of looked at him and I was like, but if it was like a world science competition, would he let me go? He didn't have an answer, so he let me go. I went on to become the world champion and break 3 world records in spoken word poetry. And when I was closing the talk at our graduation, he came up to me and he said, I'm going to put you on the Hall of Fame of the scientists in my class. And he was just really happy. What that professor did is that he challenged me. And in that challenging, he inspired me. I think that, my grandmother gave me what I needed to know to be inspired. But then my professor gave me the opportunity to test how strong that was. Because what we believe in is never tested. It's never tested in the easy moments. It's never tested when we're celebrating. It's always in those breaking points or those moments where you're asked to stand for something. And what I think is beautiful about today is that we're actually celebrating people who did stand for something and are still standing for it every single day. Like, I literally cried when you guys were talking yesterday. But anyway, so what I want to talk to you about is being deliberate about what you inspire And I think that's what the next person who inspired me is going to drive home, hopefully, and it's my mother, the person that I was looking to in Sudan when we were going through all of those things. The beauty of everything that my family taught me is that they taught me that kids are always watching, because I remember all these things from when I was little, and I was always looking to them for guidance. And thank goodness what they did in those moments is what inspired me to believe that change is the most important thing, and to accept nothing less except for the best kind of progress, the best kind of change, and that it all starts on the ground with one person, talking to another person, and it just moves forward. I wanted to tell you guys, wherever you go, the person that you're sitting next to probably can't enter the same spaces that you enter, and then the person that, is behind you probably, you can't enter the same spaces as they enter. And so whenever you go there, just remember everyone that's around you and bring them into the room with you. And that's what being an ally and being an advocate is. That's what being able to use your privilege and your access and what you have to grow the space of safety around the world is about. And I think that's the fight that we're all in. And I'm really glad to be here today. So I hope this last poem, oh wait, I forgot to say something really important. So the reason my mom inspired me the most is, we finally went back to Sudan in 2017 in August, and I was staring at this giant billboard that said, Al-Amn Mas'uliyat al-Jami', which means security is the responsibility of all. And it had the faces of Janjaweed crossed out. It was trying to amend for the war, aka the genocide, but we won't talk about that. What's really scary is that everyone knew that it was for this Weapons for Amnesty program that the government was running to try and recollect weapons and give amnesty. But the reality is that they were only collecting from people they didn't like and giving it to people they did like, and perpetuating the dynamic and the cycle of violence. So I stared at it, and then I ran to my mom, and I said, Mom, oh my God, they're trying to pass security office peace. They're going to do it again. We're all going to get hurt again. What's going to happen? And she just looked at me and she said, yep, so what are you going to do about it? So I answered that by creating a peace walk in Sudan called the One Girl Walk. I walked 1,000 kilometers in February, which is about 622 miles. Thousands of people joined me along the way. I called it the One Girl Walk because everyone at first said, you're going to walk alone. And when I said to my mom, they're telling me I'm going to walk alone, she said, so do it, prove it. And the beauty is that when you stand for what you believe in, when you really stand, you can inspire everyone. And that's what I learned. By the time we reached the gates of Khartoum, thousands of people had joined us, and we were collecting the peace streams. And I hope that when I go back soon, we'll be able to change something. So yeah, it works. Invest in people, because I've seen it and I've lived it. It really is the best way to change the world. Cool. So here's the poem. Okay, it's called Mama. So I'm walking down the street when a man stops me and says, hey, yo, sister, are you from the motherland? Because my skin is a shade too dark not to have come from foreign soil. Because this garment on my head screams Africa. Because my body is a beacon calling everyone to come flock to the motherland. I was like, yeah, I'm from Sudan, why? He said, yes, you is, because you got a little bit of flavor in you. Don't get me wrong, I'm just admiring what your mama gave you. He really said that. Let me tell you something about my mama. She can reduce a man to tattered flesh without so much as blinking. Her words fester beneath your skin, and the whole time, you won't be able to stop cradling her eyes, because my mama is a woman, flawless and formidable in the same step. Woman walks into a war zone and has warriors cowering at her feet. My mama holds all of us, in her face, in her body, in her blood, and blood is no good once you let it loose, so she always holds us close, keeping us safe from caving in. When I was 7, my mama cradled bullets in the billows of her robes. That same night, she came home and taught me how to get gunpowder out of cotton with a bar of soap. And years later, when the soldiers held her at gunpoint and asked her who she was, she said, I am a daughter of Adam. I am a woman. Who the hell are you? And the last time we went home, we watched our village burn. Soldiers pouring blood from civilian skulls as if they too could turn water into wine. The woman who raised me turned and said, don't be scared. I'm your mother. I'm here. I won't let them through. My mama gave me conviction. Women like her inherit bruised wrists, tired eyes, and a titanium-plated spine. The daughters of widows wearing the wings of amputees. They carry countries between their shoulder blades. Now, I'm not saying that dating is a first world problem, but these trifling guys seem to be the kind who'll quote Rumi, but not know what he sacrificed for war. who fawn over Lupita, but turn the racial filters on, who take their politics with a latte when I take mine with tear gas. Every guy I meet wants me my introduction to the dark side, wants me to open up the obsidian skin and let him read every tearful page, because what survivor hasn't had her struggle made spectacle? Don't talk about the motherland unless you know that being from Africa means waking up an afterthought in this country. Don't talk about my flavor unless you know that my flavor is insurrection, it is rebellion, it is resistance. My flavor is burden, it is grit, and it is compromise. And you don't know compromise until you rebuild your home for the third time, without bricks, without mortar, without any other option. I turned to the man and said, my mother and I don't walk the streets alone back home anymore. Back home, there are no streets to walk anymore. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.